All right, what's up, everybody? Thanks for clicking this video. Thanks for tuning into my channel. My name is Simon Hill, Black American from Louisiana, coming to you live from Budapest, Hungary. The time where I'm at right now is 1:35 a.m., and today is June 8th, 2025, and we are continuing our 12th book in our Book to React series, episode 6 of Black Fatigue, How Racism Erodes the Mind, Body, and Spirit, written by Mary Frances Winters. This is a 2020 book that is very fascinating, very interesting, and you can pick up this book on Amazon for the humble price of only $17 and $9.99 in the Kindle version. We've been reading this book this week, and she's been covering the different ways that racism affects us psychologically and physically, and also socially as well. And it's been a very excellent read. We're almost finished with the text. In the previous two chapters, she was covering how the effects of racism and anti-blackness affect black women. She went into great detail about that. She also covered how in the executive world or in the business world, black women and black men face many hurdles. She talked about her experiences in the past, coming up in the 70s as a black woman working at high levels of the corporate world, and how she faced barriers because of the racism and misogyny that pervades those atmospheres. And also, now today we're going to be talking about how racism affects black men and black children psychologically, socially, and physically as well. So I'm looking forward to reading these chapters. We only have 2 more left. This is a very short book, very easy to read book, very engaging book. I like her writing style, and I think this book is one of the better books that we've read in the Book React series, one of my favorites so far. I learn everything from every book that we've read, except maybe the Donald Trump book, which we did read on this channel, so go check that out. But shout out to everybody who's going to tune in and catch this on the playback. I suggest watching this on 2X. Without further ado, let's go into Chapter 7, I Can't Breathe, Black Men's Fatigue. Ralph Ellison, a black novelist and activist, wrote Invisible Man in 1952. The protagonist, a nameless black man, lives in a racist existence where his personal identity is meaningless. I remember reading Invisible Man when I was in my teen years, and it was one of the best fiction books I've ever read. We're going to be reading some fiction on Book React because I've been mostly reading, sociological books, historical books, books related to the real world, books that are more educative. Of course, novels are educative as well. But we're going to be reading some books that take us into the fiction realm that allow us to explore meanings of identity and so forth. So let's continue. So, Invisible Man is set in the South in the 1920s and Harlem in the 1930s. The book describes how the Invisible Man wrestles with the cognitive dissonance of better opportunity and the indignities of racism. As a black man, he is perceived by dominant society as a collection of negative stereotypes rather than a whole thinking, feeling human. The Invisible Man says, "They see only my surroundings, themselves, or fingerprints of their imagination. Indeed, everything and anything except me." This helps to explain police brutality against black men. They are killing a collection of stereotypes. The perpetrators refuse to see real, living, breathing people because of the anti-black racism directed toward black men is so entrenched in their psyches. Not much has changed since Ellison wrote Invisible Man. I have to say also, when we read Frank B. Wilderson's book, Afro-Pessimism, one of the phrases that he used in there that stuck with me was of social death. The idea that black people are already socially dead because around us we live in a world of stereotypes, tropes, caricatures of what it means to be black. And so when they see a black person, they're not actually seeing a person who has thoughts, feelings, contradictions. They're seeing all the ideas of what they perceive that person to be, right? So, and in a lot of ways, the ways they perceive us to be are not wanted in society, meaning that we are already dead before we are actually physically killed, because our existence it's not permitted to be here. It is not wanted here. It should be removed in the eyes of some. So, continuing here. Ryan's story. Ryan is a Renaissance black man. He has a bachelor's degree in human resources but prefers to work with his hands. When I met him, he worked for a local heating and air conditioning contractor by day and by night performed other services such as hanging pictures, installing and wall mounting smart TVs, cleaning gutters, or just about any other household repair or task you might need. He proudly declares, "I do everything." Ryan works 12 to 14 hours a day, 6 days a week, my God. He sometimes brings his preteen sons on the job to teach them the trade. And like most kids their age, they are less than enthusiastic about their father's work. One time, he even brought his toddler daughter with him because his wife had to work. Our conversations always turned to his desire to be on his own, to start his own business. He would pick my brain about entrepreneurship, its ups and downs. I strongly encouraged him to strike out on his own. I could tell that he had the wherewithal to make it work. About 18 months ago, he left his job and started a company called Skilled Hands on Demand. He was at my house on a Saturday just as I started this chapter. I am writing this in the throes of COVID-19, April 2020. I asked him how his business was faring, and he excitedly answered, booming. He said he does so many different things that there is always a need for his services. He was at my house to do the spring tune-up on the air conditioning system and change the air filters. He told me that I was his fourth call of the day. It was 2 o'clock in the afternoon. When he left my house, he was going to mount another television. The conversation turned to his previous employer. He said that he was so glad that he had left because he had been passed over for 2 promotions. The first time he was told that he was so good at his current role that they really needed him, or they really needed to keep him in that position. He said that they promoted a white man with less experience. The next time he was told that he had sold too many of a particular service. He's still baffled by that one. Yeah, growing up in Louisiana, right, you always notice you go into Walmart, you know, there's a bunch of black people working there at the cash registers, cleaning, stocking, and stuff like that, but the managers are always white. So many other places as well. You walk into the Waffle House, you go to the IHOP, you go to all the other menial service level jobs that you see in Louisiana. Bunch of black staff, always a white manager, right? And that's because that doesn't mean that black folks are not qualified to do the job. It just means that preferential treatment is given to some people to move ahead in companies. Continuing here. As we continued to talk about his business, he said, "I know that I have to be twice as good. I can't mess up because as it is, when I show up, white people and sometimes even black people are surprised, and I can see that they are skeptical." He said that as a black man, even though he is only 5 feet 5 inches tall and slightly built, he senses the fear. Ryan is an interesting character. The man studied Bachelor's of Arts. He's a little manlet. I can't talk because I'm not that tall, but for real. He's 5 feet 5 foot tall, and he has about 4 kids. He has about 4 or 5 kids, which goes to show height does not mean anything. You can do anything in this world. You can do anything in this world. Anyway, I have to spend more time building rapport and disarming their anxiety. It's crazy, but it is worth it. It is still better than working for my previous employer. I have been doing a lot of reading on the psychology of racism, and even though I just want to do a good job and make a good living for my family, I have to deal with the race stuff too. It is an added burden. It is life. Everybody loves Bobby. Bobby, not his real name, was a high-ranking black man in a major corporation. Over the 30 years that he was with the company, he was consistently given the hardest assignment in various manufacturing plants and the fewest resources. He was the documented turnaround guy. He would be assigned to the lowest performing unit and was expected to make it profitable within 6 months to a year. He was so good at it that he received many accolades and external awards for these accomplishments. When I met Bobby, he was excited about his new role in diversity and inclusion. In the job for just over a year, he approached it as a turnaround opportunity. He boasted about how he had added structure and outcomes for the employee resource groups so that they could clearly show how they added value to the company. Drawing on his manufacturing acumen, he put into place a key performance indicator process. He had a wall in his office for each of the employee resource groups that demonstrated their yearly accomplishments. Everybody at the company seemed to know, love, and respect Bobby. When you mentioned his name, people would smile and say, "He's a great guy." Bobby decided to retire early because it was obvious that the company was not really serious about diversity and inclusion. He was never able to meet with the CEO to discuss the strategy, and there was little follow through on the agreed objectives. He left the company without receiving the retirement party that was customary, as described in Chapter 6. She marks out micro because she believes that. These are not tiny things. By putting micro in front of aggression or micro invalidation, that somehow we're diminishing these things, which is why she marks them out. I tend to disagree with that because I think the descriptor prefix micro is a great way of describing it. So I keep it in, but I see where she's coming from by doing that. So anyway, Bobby was burned out and disappointed that his accomplishments were unrecognized. He said he felt a heavy burden every day coming into work, knowing that he would have to work twice as hard for any little win to move the diversity agenda. When I asked him how he is doing now as an independent consultant in manufacturing operations, he said, fantastic. A great burden had been lifted from him. I share Ryan's and Bobby's stories because we do not hear much about the Ryans and Bobbys of the world. They are invisible. The everyday black men who are working overtime hard, striving, married with children, just trying to build a better life. Like your boy Simon Hill keeps it real. More often than not, the picture that is painted of the black man in America has not changed much since slavery, that of a scary, threatening criminal, less than human menace to society. Nice, scary, hostile, deviant. Terrence Harewood, a friend and consultant to the Winters Group, is a college professor. He recounted a story about himself and a black male colleague on their first day in their doctoral program. They were the only two black men in the program. On the first day, students were asked to introduce themselves. At a break, two white women came up to them and said, "We were just talking about you two. You are so nice." Terrence said that all he and the other black student did was say their names and where they were from. Bruh, don't be scared of the pussy. Don't be scared of the pussy. Why y'all scared? I'm sorry. Anyway, how could they possibly know from these brief introductions whether or not we were nice? Man, I'm sorry. Terrence said he felt that was code for, we do not expect black men to be nice. You are not scary like our image of black men. He said he feels the burden all the time of thinking about, am I being nice enough so that they will not see my over 6 foot frame and dark skin as a threat? I am tired of having to worry about if I am nice enough. Whose discomfort is at stake to ensure that they are comfortable? While on the surface, nice is a positive description, it can be said in ways that imply you are different, not the scary, angry black man. It is a micro insult as described in Chapter 6. Even a black Santa Claus can be scary to white people. I was in a CVS near the Christmas holidays in 2019. I walked in and saw 2 5-foot Santa Clauses on display, one white and one black. As I passed them, I said to myself, how inclusive. I was happy to see the diversity and acknowledgement that Santa could actually be a person of color. I've been dressing up as Santa for 2 years. You can see that on my channel. Check it out on my channel, Black Santa. Santa Hill keeps it trail. Anyway. Sorry. As I passed them, I said to myself, how inclusive. I was happy to see the diversity and acknowledgement that Santa could actually be a person of color. After picking up a prescription, I was leaving the store, passing the Santa again, and a white couple was entering. I overheard the woman say, "Oh, that Santa Claus is so scary." Oh, Jesus Christ. I left thinking, if she thinks a statue of a black Santa is scary, what must she think about live black men? The only difference between the white and black Santa was the color of the paint used for their faces. While there are many characterizations of black men as scary, monstrous types, scholars often point to D.W. Griffith's highly successful yet very controversial 1915 silent film, The Birth of a Nation, which sadistically portrays black men as unintelligent, lazy, and sexually aggressive, especially toward white women. It provides a justification for the KKK to protect the world from dangerous black men. Protests from civil rights groups calling for discontinuation of its showing were ignored, and the film in fact led to increased violence against blacks. My son, Joseph Winters, professor of religious studies at Duke University, asserts in his book, Hope Draped in Black, Race, Melancholy, and the Agony of Progress, that the portrayals of black men and women on the big screen often still perpetuate negative stereotypes today. In the last chapter, I mentioned the critique that Halle Berry's role in Monsters Ball perpetuated the hypersexualized black woman stereotype. Winter says that Denzel Washington's portrayal in Training Day of a rogue police detective, for which he won the Oscar for Best Actor in 2002, amplified the fears and anxieties associated with the deviant black male body. Yeah, out of all the Denzel films like Hurricane, Glory, Malcolm X, Training Day is not his best performance. I repeat, Training Day is not Denzel Washington's best performance. He should have won an Oscar for his role in Glory. What else did Denzel play? He's done everything, man. Denzel's done every type of role, and Alonzo is a cool character. We love Training Day. I love Training Day. I think it's a great film, but it's not Denzel's best role, hands down. If you're listening, put in the comments what you think Denzel's best role might be. I mean, come on, Bleak. Come on, Bleak and Mo Better Blues is better because he actually learned how to play the trumpet to be Bleak in Mo Better Blues. In Training Day, all he did was put on a kufi and just intimidate. What was the guy's name? Ethan Hawke. Anyways, continuing here. Some also argued that it was because he played this stereotypical role that he won the top Oscar honor, and that there were earlier roles that were even more worthy, such as his portrayal of Malcolm X, for which he was nominated for Best Actor in 1993, and he should have won. I want to know, who won Best Actor in 1993 in the Oscars? Better than Malcolm X? Stop playing. Anyway, black men are not a monolith. However, similar to black women, black men share experiences that are unique to them as a group based on their identifiable characteristics, skin color, and gender. While men are not usually identified as a stigmatized group like women, black men by and large do not enjoy the power and privilege afforded white men based on their group membership as men. For example, research shows that white men often benefit from exhibiting stereotypically masculine behavior in the workplace. However, men of color are more likely to be penalized for the same behaviors. For example, Latinos, especially those of Mexican national origin, endure stereotypes in some settings that describe them as emotional and macho with negative connotations. They also may be stereotyped as too aggressive and too dominant. Black men are often stereotyped as aggressive and hostile and associated with violence and street crime. Tall, dark, and handsome. Studies show that tall men enjoy privileges that short men do not. I don't know, man. There's some people that are hyper fixated on height, and I wouldn't mind being taller. I wouldn't mind being taller and also having a bigger manhood. I wouldn't mind that. But I think height is overrated. Women say that they don't mind height most of the time. Women sometimes say all that matters is that he's nice and kind and stuff like that. But now some women are saying like, oh, height is so important. I've never had a problem with my height in general. And I think, what am I, 5'7", 5'8" on a good day? I don't know. But I feel like height is not that important, man. All right. Acti says, I love him in Malcolm X and Mo Better Blues, and also in Hurricane, and also in Glory. We should just go on a Denzel spree. We should just review every Denzel movie to find his absolute best performance. But anyway, studies show that tall men enjoy privileges that short men do not. For example, women find tall men more attractive. Tall men are more likely to succeed in business. 60% of CEOs are over 6 feet tall, while only 15% of male population is over 6 feet tall. Only 15% of guys are over 6 feet tall. I didn't know that. I didn't know that. Only 15% of men are over 6 feet tall. Tall men make more money than short men. For every additional inch of height, men make on average $800 more per year. Note the median income of a black man in 2017 was $41,347, compared with $60,388 for white men. However, these favorable perceptions do not hold true for black men. The taller the black man, the more threatening he is perceived to be. Based on research conducted by psychologists from the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, for every one white man over 6 feet 4 stopped by the police, 6.2 black men were stopped. In another study, where 318 participants were asked to look at photographs of 16 young men, half white and half black, the taller the white subjects, the more likely they were rated as competent and non-threatening. The opposite was true for the black subjects. They were rated as incompetent and threatening. There is an interesting caveat, however. When threat is removed from the equation, tall black men, like tall white men, project the same aura of competence. The researchers concluded that a black male business executive may be positively perceived at a board meeting and then negatively stereotyped when he takes off his suit and goes for a run. Interesting. All right. Kilani L says in 1993, the nominees were Robert Downey Jr. for Chaplin, Clint Eastwood for Unforgiven, Stephen Ray for The Crying Game, and Denzel for Malcolm X, and Al Pacino in Scent of a Woman. And who won? Pacino won. Okay, Pacino is a great actor. I have not seen Scent of a Woman. I don't know, man. What did he do in there? Because the way, Denzel was acting in Malcolm X, like, he could literally move you to tears in almost every scene he was in. He embodied, like, the stoic, the coldness, the determination of a civil rights icon. What did Pacino do in Scent of a Woman that was so amazing? If you've seen this film, or if you know what this film is about, put it in the comments. Put what Scent of a Woman is about. Maybe link me to the most powerful scene. We might watch it here, because I could not imagine Pacino, who is a great actor, by the way, beating Denzel in that category. Anyway, there are numerous stories of professional black men who say that even if they are going into the office on a weekend, they dress in business attire for fear of being questioned by security. Even on casual Fridays, black men often are still very mindful of how their look may trigger negative stereotypes and are more apt to dress more formally. Definitely not wear a hoodie. Hillary Clinton declared in a campaign speech in 2015 that even open-minded white people are sometimes afraid of hoodie-wearing black men. Black men often work hard to avoid stereotype threats. This extra emotional labor of constantly wondering whether you look threatening is fatiguing. I used to wear a suit all the time, and I really like wearing suits. I used to have many colored different suits and stuff like that. And I used to think, that if I wore the suit that I'm somehow going to be able to protect myself from the effects of white supremacy and anti-blackness. But it doesn't work. I've still been wearing a suit and been told and treated all types of negative ways. So for me, I just don't care anymore. I wear a wife beater, I wear a suit, I wear a button-down shirt, I wear a hoodie. I don't care, because we can't continue to live in this world where our bodies, our clothing are policed by whiteness, right? We can't continue to do that, all right? Continuing. So, two black men, Andre Wright and Jason Soul, started the Humanize My Hoodie movement as a part of Born Leaders United to destigmatize clothing trends associated with BIPOC. The movement includes a book, Humanize My Hoodie, allyship workshops, and a clothing line. We seek to create a world in which our fashion is improbable cause for us to be slain in the streets, the founders say on their website. They claim that wearing their hoodie has had a positive impact on reversing the negative stereotype. Humanize My Hoodie. I need one of these. Somebody do me a favor and buy this for me and mail it to me. All right? Humanize My Hoodie, but I want it in red. I want it in bright red or pink. Or pink. Because even though I'm wearing a hoodie, pink is still the color that will disarm anybody. Anyway. While black women may consider more melanin to be a desirable trait for black men, in general, light skin color is perceived as better than, more desirable, and less threatening than dark skin. A University of Georgia study with 240 subjects found that a light-skinned black man with a bachelor's degree was more likely to be higher than a dark-skinned black man with an MBA. University of San Francisco researchers conducted a study that revealed that educated black men are remembered by subjects as having lighter skin. Interesting. The results indicated that participants who were shown the word educated had more memory errors and often chose the photos with a lighter-skinned black man when asked to recall the face they originally saw with darker skin. Interesting. All right. Honestly, that was probably one of the top 3 lists of nominees ever. Any of those performances were worth it. Robert Downey Jr. was incredible in Chaplin. All right, shout out to Kalani. Kalani might be like a real movie buff, a real movie nerd who knows his stuff. I'll give it up to you. I just feel like to some degree, some of these films live on more. Some of these films live on more. And like Malcolm X as a film, like from the moment it was released, it was a cultural moment, and it's a historical film that put this civil rights icon in another stratosphere. I think people forget that, Malcolm X was mostly stigmatized most of his life. And it wasn't until, many decades after his death that he became sanitized enough for the public to consume, where basically people on the right and left, no matter what walk of life you come from in America, look to Malcolm X as like a civil rights icon and a hero in American history, right? And the film had a lot to do with that. So I think, Malcolm X as a film is just so momentous that it stands out more than Scent of a Woman or Unforgiven or Chaplin and stuff like that. I'll be frank, I have not seen these films, or if I have seen these films, I forgot them. But I think that goes to show even more the power of Malcolm X. Am I biased? Yes, because I'm a black man from America, from Louisiana, from the Deep South. But I'll say this, are the whites biased? Yes, this is the thing. This is the thing, too. Somebody might say, oh, Simon Hill Keeps It Trail is just harping on and trying to glaze Malcolm X because he's, biased. But we never have the same thing for the whites. The whites continue to uplift themselves, uplift their works, uplift their cultural contributions, if any. And we never say, oh, they're biased, right? Or we look at their bias as people just hating. You know what I'm saying? But I'll be honest, I'm the biggest hater. I'm the biggest hater. If it's not black, it's whack. If it's not black, it's whack. As far as cultural moments, as far as these cultural moments such as films, you feel me? But anyway, I'm continuing here. Based on a statistical study of the effects of skin tone on wages conducted in 2018 by researchers from several universities, the authors concluded that taller males with darker skin are paid less. As a matter of fact, education made the disparity worse. Dark-skinned, college-educated men have had even lower earnings compared with individuals with lighter skin. For every 1 unit increase in the darkness of skin tone on a 10-point scale, with 0 being the lightest and 10 being the darkest, annual real wages declined by $463.88. As stated earlier, height penalizes black men's salary, and when you add the decrease based on skin tone, it is a double whammy. In this study, skin tone did not affect black women's salaries. If I were to think about this on a scale or a chart, right, with the x-axis being like salary and y being height, right? For white men, the taller they get, the more money they make, right? But for black men, it's like, the opposite. It's like the taller you are, or maybe the shorter you are. In fact, it's probably the opposite, right? The shorter you are, the less intimidating you are to the white power structure, and the more opportunity you have to make money, right? And then as the taller you get, the lower your salary gets. But then once you reach extreme levels of height, of course, now you can get in the NBA and play for, I don't know, the Houston Rockets. You get what I'm saying? So it's like, it goes down. The taller you get, the less money you make as a black man. But then once you hit that 7-foot range, you out of there. You get what I'm saying? Anyway, continuing here. I wonder how white folks think about Shaquille O'Neal. Imagine Shaquille O'Neal. Imagine if Shaquille O'Neal wasn't, 7'3"? Is Shaquille O'Neal like over 7 foot tall? Like, how do white folks think about Shaquille O'Neal? Anyway, on guard. Negative stereotypes put black men on guard in the workplace. At least 25% of black men of color report being on guard in the workplace. Black men and women often resort to code switching, adjusting their style of speech, appearance, behavior, and expression in ways that will optimize the comfort of the dominant group in the workplace. White people. Black men, especially tall ones, are often assumed to have prowess in sports. You must be good at basketball, is a statement my son, Joe, often heard because of his 6'4" frame. He was a much better scholar than he was an athlete. Micro invalidation. The stereotypes of the good black men are as entertainers, sports figures, or musicians, and not business leaders or scholars, causes cognitive dissonance for many whites and frustration and fatigue for black men. Whether educated or not, black men continue to conjure up images of the boogeyman, and it is detrimental to their health, income, safety, and overall well-being. Living as a black man in America is a scary proposition. It is fatiguing. Tokenized and silenced. Black men, like black women, are tokenized in many of the same ways. They are selected to be part of a diversity committee and expected to be the voice of all black men in the organization, or their black presence is desired, but their voices are not welcome. I participated in a fireside chat recently with the CEO of a very large company in response to the Black Lives Matter protests of 2020. The virtual event was broadcast to all employees. A high-ranking black man at the company was also invited. The virtual session was conducted by the three of us. As I understood the assignment, it was to be a 1-hour question and answer session with me bringing the outside expertise and the black man providing an internal perspective. I was dismayed that the process consisted of the CEO and the black executive taking turns asking me questions for the whole hour. The black executive's only role was to query me. I so badly wanted to ask him to share his thoughts, and in hindsight, I wish I had. It was definitely not clear to me in our prep call several days before the event that this was the only role in the black executive would play. I imagine he felt invalidated and even invisible. An us or them existence. The Winters Group uses a tool called the Intercultural Development Inventory, or IDI, to access cultural competence. It is a psychometric instrument that measures one's worldview toward difference. The first two orientations, denial and polarization, are considered monocultural worldviews, where your perspectives are shaped only by your experiences. The model proposes that at these two stages, you have a more simplistic, judgmental worldview. The next orientation is minimization, a worldview that focuses on similarities, for example, colorblind, all lives matter. The last two orientations are acceptance and adaptation. At acceptance, one has a more complex understanding of differences and is able to discern them in a non-judgmental way. Adaptation is the ability to not only discern differences, but also effectively navigate them. I more often find black men at polarization on the continuum, representing a judgmental us and them worldview. When I share these results, they are usually not surprised. Responses often go something like this: I do see the world as an us and them. I have to constantly watch out for them as a black man because I know that I am hated, seen as dangerous, and someone to be feared. A vice president of a large corporation said, "We are confronted with daily situations that make you see the world as us and them. I guess to move along this continuum, I have to let go of the cuts and bruises that I have had. No matter how much I want the world to be different, it is not. It is a matter of survival, and I do not know how else to see the world. This is my reality." Very similar to how I see it. You know, it's not us and them all the time, but most of the time, right? I mean, you do have to move through this world understanding that as a black person, you are going to be hated, feared, and misunderstood. While Eric Garner and George Floyd literally could not breathe and tragically lost their lives, this sentiment can be figuratively applied to many black men in America. If we use "I can't breathe" as a metaphor for anxiety, fear, and lack of true freedom, many black men cannot breathe. As mentioned in Chapter 4, News One reported in June of this year that 83 black men and boys have been killed by police. Let's repeat that. This book was written in 2020. News One reported in June of this year that 83 black men and boys had been killed by police in the half of the year. Black people are 3 times more likely to be killed by police. Philando Castile was shot and killed after being pulled over for a routine stop with his girlfriend and toddler in the car. Trayvon Martin, 14, was killed while walking home from the store after buying Skittles. Tamir Rice was 12 when he was shot and killed by a police officer. Seconds after he came on the scene, Rice was playing with a toy gun. In each of these cases, the police officers were acquitted. According to Mapping Police Violence, 99% of killings by police from 2013 to 2019 have not resulted in the officers being charged with the crime. Black people, and black men in particular, are more likely to be stopped by police. Based on a Stanford University study of 93 million traffic stops from 21 states between 2001 and 2017, black motorists were 20% more likely to be stopped by police. Several years ago, I was conducting a session at a country club in suburban Ohio. One of the participants, a black male, was late for the session. It was not until the break that he shared with me that he had been stopped by the police for no apparent reason. They asked him where he was going and intimated that they do not usually see people like him in that area driving an expensive car. He told me that he was having trouble concentrating on the session because he was still shaken and angry about the experience. And it was a diversity training session, As it was a diversity training session, I asked him whether he wanted to share the experience with the group. He declined because he did not want to call attention to himself, and he doubted that most would understand anyway. Yeah, I felt like that before. Many times I wanted to speak up and say exactly how I'm feeling, but you can't. You can't. You gotta bite your tongue sometimes because you don't want to even face the double trauma of people doubting your experience, mischaracterizing your experience, or victim blaming you. So, blame a black man syndrome. As pointed out in Chapter 3, black men are incarcerated at 3 times their representation in the population. I noted that the spike in the number of incarcerations happened during the 80s as a result of Ronald Reagan's War on Drug initiative, which attached inordinately long sentences to drug offenses. I also pointed out that black men are the largest group to be exonerated for being wrongfully accused of crimes that they did not commit, largely because of what can be called blame a black man syndrome. This refers to white people blaming black men for crimes they committed themselves or making false accusations that are not investigated by law enforcement because they are so believable in light of entrenched stereotypes of black men as criminals. One of the most famous instances of this was when Susan Smith killed her 2 young children, but blamed it on some imaginary black man, and immediately police started an all-out search for him. Amanda Knox blamed a black man when she was accused of killing her roommate in Italy. It left the falsely accused man, Dia Patrick Lumumba, a local business owner, bankrupt. Oh, horrific. There is a pattern based on negative biases about black men and positive ones about white women that pushes law enforcement to aggressively pursue the alleged perpetrator. As mentioned in the preface, Amy Cooper accused a black birdwatcher, Christian Cooper, not related, in Central Park of threatening her and her dog because he requested that she follow the park's leash regulations. In videos recorded by Christian Cooper, Amy Cooper pretends to be in imminent danger, calling 911 and screaming for the police to hurry because an African-American man is threatening her. Damn, I miss 2020. I miss 2020 for real because 2020 was actually a lit-ass year. 2020 was a lit year because, number one, COVID had everybody popping pussy on Instagram. I'm joking. Secondly, the Karens were exposed. The Karen videos that were going viral were showing white people at their absolute worst. 2020 was like the best year to be black in relative terms in America and the worst year to be white in America. Like, I remember the video of Amy Cooper, getting exposed in Central Park, and that was just chef's kiss. Fantastic. Like, everybody was laughing at her. Everybody understood what it felt like to be black in America and having, like, blame a black man syndrome play out, like, live in front of you. You get what I'm saying? Of course, horrific things happened in 2020. Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, etc., etc. But it was still such a good year, man. It was still such a lit-ass year. We got our Trump checks, you feel me? We were working remotely. Shit was popping. It was lit. Anyway, I'm sorry. I'm continuing here. It feeds the stereotype from The Birth of a Nation and other portrayals that black men are violent and obsessed with white women, necessitating extra protection for them from black men. Mass incarceration. As discussed in Chapter 3, mass incarceration is a serious social issue in this country that disproportionately affects black and brown people, and black men in particular. Black men account for 6% of the population. However, 15% of black men in the United States have been to prison, compared with 6% of all adult men. Let's repeat. 15% of black men in the United States have been to prison, compared with 6% of all adult men. And social scientists predict that 1 in 3 black men will face prison time during their lifetime. As stated earlier, black people also account for 47% of the exonerations. Let's repeat. Most of the people, a good portion, close to half of all the people that are found not innocent of crimes are black people. And we only comprise 13% of the population. Let that sink in. There are so many innocent black men in jail right now. This is why if I were president, I would snap my fingers, free every single black man in jail, because there is too many instances of black people being in there for wrongly being accused of something. Everybody goes free, okay? Kamal says, how late? A record, comrade. Shout out to Kamal. And yeah, we're coming late. Hopefully, it's maybe not too late for you wherever you are, and you get to chill and read with us as we continue to finish up Black Fatigue by Mary Frances Winters. Shout out to Kamal. Shout out to everybody up in the live stream. Let's continue here. So, Black men are more likely to be incarcerated on drug charges, and white men are more likely to be sent to rehabilitation. 80% of the incarcerated in federal prisons for drug offenses are black. Black people are no more likely to use drugs than white people. Black men get longer sentences and have higher rates of recidivism because of entrenched systems that make it difficult to re-enter society. In a report in 2018 to the United Nations from the Sentencing Project on the racial disparities in the U.S. criminal justice system, recommendations to the UN Special Rapporteur included ending the war on drugs to reduce the number of low-level drug offenders prosecuted in federal court, eliminating mandatory minimum sentences, not retaining defendants pre-trial because they cannot afford bail if they do not pose a safety or flight risk, requiring racial impact statements for proposed sentencing policies, and requiring implicit bias training at every level of the criminal justice system, among others. I like all of these, especially racial impact statements for proposed sentencing policies. I like all of those policy suggestions. I do not think that any of these recommendations has gained traction. Mass incarceration of black men, in part, explains why black people are much less likely to be married. In 2016, in the United States, 29% of black people were married. Let's repeat, in 2016, only 29% of black people were married, compared with 48% of all Americans. There is a shortage of eligible black men. Interestingly, until the 1960s, black and white rates of marriage were essentially the same, and then there was steep widening of the gap that persists today. It was during this time that the rates of mass incarceration began to increase sharply for black men. Incarceration rates are more than 500% higher than they were 40 years ago. Another factor contributing to lower marriage rates is job instability for black men. According to a study conducted by the Census Bureau and National Bureau of Economic Research, black men fare worse economically than white men, even if they are raised in households with similar incomes and educated similarly. A black boy brought up in a wealthy family is as likely to become poor in adulthood as he is to remain prosperous. Lower marriage rates negatively affect chances for economic stability, as highlighted in Chapter 3. All right. Kamal says, I wanted to be a prosecutor. Luckily, I learned about the gross reality of the bias system in the time. Yeah, shout out to Kamal. If I could do it all over again, if I could do my life over, I would become a lawyer and become a criminal defense attorney. Maybe a public defender. A public defender that, works really hard on something, but that might be ideal. But yeah, I would be a criminal defense attorney or a civil rights attorney. I could never in my life be a prosecutor. Thank God you didn't do that. There's only one thing worse than a cop, and that's the district attorney and the state's attorney and the federal prosecutors. Those are the worst. Okay? Continuing here. So, a black boy brought up in a wealthy family is as likely to become poor in adulthood as he is to remain prosperous. Lower marriage rates negatively affect chances for economic stability, as highlighted in Chapter 3. Mass incarceration is also a public health issue. During the COVID-19 outbreak in 2020, the horrors of the prison system were once again illuminated. Overcrowding and poor sanitation put prisoners at higher risk. Many black men in prison are already health compromised. Reports of guards and prisoners testing positive for COVID-19 were especially sobering since quarantines are nearly impossible among incarcerated populations. To address this, some jurisdictions released prisoners. In doing so, it was also uncovered that many black men were imprisoned for minor offenses and had sentences disproportionately longer than their white counterparts for the same offense. Mass incarceration is a well-entrenched system to perpetuate structural racism. It affects every aspect of one's life, from socioeconomics to voting, employment, and personal relationships. It is a form of genocide. Agreed. It is a form of genocide. Agreed. Man up with barbershop therapy and healing for black men. I pointed out in Chapter 4 that the life expectancy of black men is the lowest of every group, almost a decade lower than that of white women. I also shared how black men are more likely than other segments of the population to have undiagnosed or poorly managed chronic conditions, diabetes, cancers, heart disease, etc. For example, prostate cancer is the most common illness among black men, and black men are more likely to get it and twice as likely to succumb to it. Additionally, black men are the only demographic group for which homicide is one of the top 5 causes of death. Black men are also more likely to delay seeking medical care. There are various reasons for not seeking care, including lack of access. Black men are more likely to live in poverty than their white counterparts and less likely to have health insurance. Even with a job, more black men, like black women, are employed in industries that do not offer health insurance. Lack of trust is also a significant factor in black men not seeking care. I highlighted the issue of trust in Chapter 4, which is tied to the widespread experimentation on black people without our approval throughout history. The most famous involving black men is perhaps the Tuskegee syphilis study. A study in Harvard Business Review in 2018 reported that black men are more likely to seek treatment when the physician was also black because of a greater level of trust. Machoism is also a factor. Research shows that black men are the least likely to seek out mental health support because of the tough guy syndrome. The Michigan-based Man Up, Man Down research program studies the physical and emotional health of black men. Based on focus group research in 6 cities from 2010 to 2018, the researchers found some consistent themes when they asked what it means to be a real man, including being tough and self-sufficient. And they found that many black men embrace the tough guy syndrome as a source of self-esteem and self-respect. The researchers assert that the syndrome contributes to black men being the least likely to seek mental health services, almost half as likely as white men. Black men often receive counseling from their barbers, known as barbershop therapy. They are found that this is the safe, non-judgmental, trusting environment where they are able to unload their burdens. The Confess Project, a nonprofit based in Little Rock, Arkansas, is training barbers to be frontline counselors for clients who are depressed or traumatized. The initiative is also now in Kentucky, Tennessee, South Carolina, Georgia, and Louisiana. Its website asks, ever been told to man up when all you wanted to do was cry? Wish there was someone to talk to who understood where you were coming from? Had a moment when all the isms in life were too much to bear? We've been there. Jeff Johnson, who had a career as a journalist, producer, and TV host, now runs Men Thrive, a nonprofit that provides a community that is curated to proclaim the generational toxic stress, depression, and anxiety standing in the way of us, black men, living our best lives as something that must end. Men Thrive debunks the narrative that black men must hide their feelings, be tough, and fix their faces. Don't show emotion. Johnson's organization seeks to reprogram the brain with self-mastery tools and positive affirmations in support of black men showing up whole, operating with joy, and living with power. Show me some respect. What does it mean today to be a black man in the United States? Ralph Ellison's characterization of his protagonist as invisible is an apt metaphor for the historical and current social realities for many black boys and men. Ellison's story ends with the invisible man being chased by police during a riot in Harlem and falling into a manhole in the middle of the street. The police put the cover of the manhole back in place, trapping the man in the hole. Kamal says toxic masculinity, holding it in leads to higher crime rates and the highest incarceration rate by far. I agree 1,000%, man. It's okay to cry. It's okay to cry. It's okay to feel bad. It's okay to be, sensitive, man. We need to stop pushing this toxicness on manhood in general, because that's why we end up with heart disease, colon cancer, and dying at 55. But anyway, so they trap him in the manhole. I'm an invisible man, and it placed me in a hole, or showed me the hole I was in, if you will, and I reluctantly accepted the fact, writes Ellison. Many black men today can relate to the character's experience of feeling trapped in a hole and irrelevant. The Winters Group conducted healing sessions with black employees from several companies that had muzzled and unsafe to describe their existence in the workplace. They carry the weight of invisibleness with many different and sometimes destructive responses. Black men have a number of different personas, including nurturing, father figure, supportive, partner, strong, don't show emotion, macho man, laid back, nothing bothers me, a hard, mean, outward vibe, I'll kick your ass if you mess with me. Behind these different personas hide deep wounds from intergenerational denigration. as a result of centuries of mistreatment and being characterized as subhuman, sexually aggressive, threatening, and lazy for some. These perceptions have been internalized and take many different forms of outward behaviors on the scale from passivity to aggression, from a carefree, happy demeanor to rage. It is part of the post-traumatic slave syndrome that Joy DeGruy describes. Kamal says, right, if a man is not supposed to cry, then why the fuck have we such an ability? Exactly, man. Let your tear ducts flow. Let your tear ducts flow and watch a sad movie. You know what song always makes me cry? Whenever I need to cry and I can't cry, there's one song that always makes me cry. And it's Bob Marley's Redemption song. I don't even listen to that song. I try to stay away from that song as much as I can because that song always makes me cry. There has never been a time since I've heard that song till now that I have not cried when I've heard it, which is why I can still count on my hands the number of times I've heard that song. Even when I was playing guitar, and I tried to play guitar for some time, and I tried to play Redemption song, I couldn't even get through the doom, 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 doom. Couldn't get through it on the strings. Made me cry. Made me cry. Anyway, so the Man Up, Man Down research also found that black men said being a real man included providing for your family, achieving the respect of others, and attaining financial success. Because black men are more likely not to be able to provide for their families as a result of discriminatory workplace practices, they cannot achieve financial success, which means they also will not achieve the respect of others. This leads to depression, anger, and rage, which, as I pointed out earlier, more often than not goes untreated. Black men want to be respected. For the most part, they get little real respect in the white world, and therefore yearn for it and even demand it from their own community. The term dis, which has been appropriated by most of popular culture, originated in the black community to mean disrespect, and you should not disrespect a black man or be ready to suffer a range of consequences, as described earlier. This deep-seated quest for respect can manifest too often in patriarchy and turning to an alternate, illegal by dominant standards, economy for income. All right. Shout out to Kamal up in the chat. Patriarchy, sexism, misogyny, and abuse. Patriarchy shows up in black culture in explicit and subtle ways. One manifestation is in the church. In some black churches, women are not allowed to be full-fledged clergy, and in some cases, they are not even allowed to sit in the pulpit. I remember a number of years ago being baffled when I was asked to be the Women's Day speaker at a church, but was told that I would not be able to sit in the pulpit. Shame. A shame. I also notice how black men often savor the prestige of being a trustee or a steward or on the deacon board. If they have a lay leadership role, they take it very seriously. The church is one of perhaps only a few places where they can get respect and also utilize talents that may be underutilized in the corporate world. Patriarchy and sexism are often defended by narrow interpretations of the Bible. Misogynist messages are common in the hip-hop music world. Consider the case brought against rap group 2 Live Crew in 1990. They were arrested on obscenity charges for sexually explicit lyrics that denigrated black women in their song, Nasty As You Wanna Be. The case was later dismissed, but the controversy remains as to whether these types of lyrics in hip-hop fuel the rape culture and sexual violence against black women. Henry Louis Gates Jr., a prominent black historian at Harvard University, argued that 2 Live Crew was intending to exaggerate stereotypes about black men and women to show how ridiculous they are and push white society's buttons. Kimberly Crenshaw weighed in, opposing Gates and arguing that these harmful images are still too real in the minds of many white people and that young people who listen to these messages may embody them. I like Henry Louis Gates. I know some people hate on him. I like Henry Louis Gates. He's a real one. Okay. I never knew that about the black church. Yeah, I didn't, I grew up in a Presbyterian church, and I don't think I ever saw a woman preaching. There were women sitting on stage, I think, but I don't remember, like, a woman preaching in the Presbyterian church, and definitely not in the Catholic church that I also went to as well. I like Henry Louis Gates for standing up for hip-hop. 2 Live Crew and, like, generally, booty shaking, nasty rap music, right? It has a place. Like, we deserve as black folks to be able to let our hair down, be free, get loose and stuff like that. And we have to remember that The same way, you know, black intellectuals and the white establishment lashed out at hip hop and said that this is negative stereotypes about black men, black women. They're only promoting misogyny and materialism and unsafe sex. They said the same thing about the blues. They said the same thing about rock and roll. They said the same thing about ragtime and all the other genres of American music that we create. The classic American music, jazz, classic black American music, jazz, was considered, you know, the lowest and most debased form of music when it first came out. So, like, when I think, you know, I take the Henry Louis Gates Jr. side, of course, it's not okay to just be calling, like, women bitches and hoes and stuff like that, right? In general, right? We don't talk like that in person, but I listen to hip hop all day, every day, and I don't walk outside and call women bitches and hoes. I don't talk to Acti and call her a bitch and a hoe. We don't do stuff like that. People are able to compartmentalize, be paradoxical, and be contradictory. All right? Henry Louis Gates Jr. is the closest to the leader of today's community, at least what remains of it. I don't consider, is he a leader? I think leaders are somebody like William Barber of the Poor People's Campaign. I consider William Barber like a true one. He a real one. He a G. You feel me? Henry Louis Gates like is an intellectual, a funny guy, charismatic, very hardworking. He's always doing something, right? And you know, has written a lot of great books and does a lot for Black history, right? And bringing Black history to the fore in America. I believe Henry Louis Gates Jr. is the most preeminent Black American historian, right? He is the most preeminent living Black American historian, right? And I like him. He sometimes can be problematic, but I like him in general. Anyway, when Kobe Bryant died tragically in 2020, Snoop Dogg denigrated Gayle King publicly, using misogynistic language, for bringing up the 2003 rape charge against Bryant in an interview with Lisa Leslie. He later apologized, but it brings up the complex relationship between black men and women that dates back to slavery, when families were ripped apart. The slavery-inspired stereotypes of black women have been internalized by some black men. All right, Kamal says, right, I can't imagine referring to women in general as such. Yeah, I don't think there's any black man that just runs around rampantly calling women bitches and hoes. Like, that only lives in a Snoop Dogg song or in the minds of white folks. Most black men are very respectful to women. Most black men, I think, are very kind to women. And in general, we might love hip-hop. We might love this genre, but that doesn't mean that we hate our sisters. You get what I'm saying? As I pointed out in Chapter 6, black women are much more likely to face domestic violence at the hands of their partners. I also mentioned that they are more likely to stand by their man, even though they are 3 times more likely to die from domestic or intimate partner violence than white women. While I certainly would never condone or make excuses for this behavior, I assert the reasons for these egregious actions are complex. I am only trying to explain that when we simply judge the behavior without exploring the root, cause, and the role that white supremacy plays, we may draw erroneous conclusions. As I said earlier, black men want respect such as that derived from the ability to provide for one's family. With unemployment rates for black men at twice the rate of white men since 1960, it becomes an affront to one's manhood, and those who are not able to handle the stress may turn to violence. Black women also have their own challenges, as pointed out in Chapter 6, and a couple trying to navigate the realities of racism may encounter relationship problems. This is one of the reasons for higher divorce rates and fewer marriages among black people. Go into the summary. Black men need and deserve respect. I repeat, black men need and deserve respect. They do not want to be viewed as scary and threatening. They do not want to fear for their lives. They want to be able to reach their full potential without the extraordinary burden of living in a white supremacist, racist society. Black men are fatigued by trying to play the rules that do not work for them or are changed when it looks as if they may support them. There are many groups around the country that continue to work on the unique issues that black men face, such as the YMCA, Boys and Girls Clubs, 100 Black Men, black fraternities, churches, and many others. We dream a world. The 2025 Vision for Black Men and Boys is a project of the 21st Century Foundation that lays out a comprehensive agenda for reform in 5 key areas: education, fatherhood and families, employment and wealth, health, and criminal justice. We have to continue to shine a light on the enormous life obstacles that structural racism and negative stereotyping present for black men. It will take collective responsibility, which has been referred to as collective guilt, a social justice concept that individuals are responsible for other people's actions by tolerating, ignoring, or harboring them without actively collaborating in them. From collective responsibility must come collective action. A major first step is to reframe our equity and justice work on behalf of black men to focus on asset rather than deficit thinking in actions. What are the positive aspects of black manhood? Focus on the unique contributions throughout history to build strong, positive self-concepts. Disrupt negative narratives in the media by holding the media accountable for more unbalanced reporting of black men. As I mentioned in Chapter 3, the media disproportionately uses negative portrayals of black men, which is disturbing and fatiguing. Excellent chapter. I really like that chapter. She's fair. She's not here to bash black men. I like her writing style, and it's very on point. So here's the picture leading up to the next chapter that we will read. This will be the last chapter that we're going to be reading for today's walkthrough of Black Fatigue by Mary Frances Winters. Here's the picture here. It says, "It's easier to build stronger children than to repair broken men." Frederick Douglass, American social reformer, abolitionist, orator, writer, and statesman. Shout out to Frederick Douglass. He was a G. He was a real one. Let's go here. 8. Out of the mouths of babes, black children's fatigue. Let's go here. So going to Joe. My son Joe, yes, the same one mentioned throughout the book, the associate professor of religion at Duke University and the Harvard, Duke, and Princeton graduate, was quite a handful between the ages of 2 and 9. I was a working mother, so both he and his sister, Marisha, were in daycare and then after-school care. Joe was an especially difficult toddler and young child. He threw his share of tantrums and then some. Popular parenting tools like the timeout chair did not work at all for Joe. He was sent home from the daycare center several times for aggression, fighting, and otherwise unacceptable behavior. We learned later that allergies may have accounted for some of this behavior. We tried Montessori school, where he lasted about 3 weeks. The teacher said he did not string beads or march the Montessori way. I thought the whole idea of Montessori education is that you are free to explore your own way. Anyway, a top quote I retain. Yes, it's easier to raise good children than to fix broken men or something like that. Yeah. So, Joe was always big for his age. By 6 months old, he was in the 99th percentile for weight and height. He was over 6 feet by the time he was 12. Okay, wow, that's a really big boy. We sought the advice of a child psychologist who basically said that based on her testing, he was of at least average intelligence. He was just wired differently. I'm not sure that we learned specific strategies to help Joe from her. Even with the behavioral issues, Joe has always had a huge heart. One day when he was 3 years old, I thought he was playing close to home, but I did not see him in the yard. He rode his big wheel to the next door neighbors, knocked on the door and said, "Hi, I just came over to see how everybody is doing. You all okay?" The neighbors and I had the biggest laugh. When he was 9 years old, 1986, he woke up crying one morning because he was concerned that everybody in the whole world would die of AIDS. Still today, his caring spirit is what his friends and colleagues admire. At his dissertation defense at Princeton, Cornel West, one of Joe's advisors, said of his protege, "Joe does not only possess one of the finest minds that I have encountered, he is one of the finest people I have ever known." Shout out to Cornel West. He a real one. Joe went to predominantly white schools, and he was often the only black boy in his class and the tallest. Up until 4th grade, he continued to have various behavioral issues at school. His dad and I were frequently in meetings with teachers. In 4th grade, his white male teacher transformed our perception of Joe from a difficult child of average intelligence to a brilliant one. He said, "I think the only thing wrong with Joe is that he is brilliant and has not been challenged." Almost immediately, Joe's grades started to improve. Largely, I think, because his self-concept improved. Fast forward to high school, Joe graduated as valedictorian of his all-male Jesuit school, having attained straight A's, and was awarded a 4-year full academic scholarship to Harvard. If Joe had not had a teacher in 4th grade who was able to see beyond the prevailing stereotypes of black boys, less intelligent, aggressive, and see his potential, Joe's life story may have been very different. Even we, as parents, were buying into the deficit narrative about Joe. I just wanted Joe to comply and to stop causing trouble. I did not thoroughly consider the role that implicit bias played in his earlier teacher's assessments. I did not probe enough with Joe as to his day-to-day school experiences that may have contributed to his behavior. I do know that it was frustrating and fatiguing for us as parents, and certainly for Joe, coming of age as a black boy in the 1980s in America. What about all the black children who do not have a fourth grade teacher like Joe's? What about all the brilliant minds that are being lost because they are being stereotyped as less than, not capable? So shout out to Joe. He was able to, rise and thrive because he grew up in that two-parent home where people were taking care of him and were standing up for him at school, when they were labeling him a bad black boy, right? Sometimes boys just go through a phase, but sometimes as a black boy in this world, like you might go through a phase and it affects you for the rest of your life, like Tay-K. You get what I'm saying? Continuing here. Marisha. Joe's sister, Marisha, did not have any significant issues until third grade. On a report card, she was labeled lazy. Marisha was shy as a child, an introvert, but lazy did not seem to fit. When we sought clarification, the teacher told us that Marisha often put her head down on the desk during music. When we asked Marisha, she told us that the teacher would come close to her with instruments such as tambourines or maracas and wanted the students to show that they were getting into the rhythm. Marisha did not like attention on her, so she put her head down and essentially recoiled. Rather than attempt to understand Marisha's behavior, the teacher judged her based on her interpretation of what putting your head on the desk meant. Lazy is a particularly triggering depiction because it is an entrenched stereotype about black people and not one that we wanted to be part of Marisha's record. After much cajoling, the teacher deleted the term lazy. It was fatiguing. I share this story because I know that there are many black parents who are extra vigilant in ensuring that their children are not stereotyped and labeled. The extra emotional toll is fatiguing. Yeah, I can relate, man, because, like, my memories of school being black in, like, public education, man, like, I have so many memories of this, teacher, I remember once, at least, like, in university, a teacher told me, you'll never amount to anything. Or, like, a teacher pulling me out of the classroom and saying, like, people like you don't deserve to be here if you're going to show up late to class and stuff like that. I was like, that's kind of racist. That was very racist. I had a very racist teacher say that to me. And I've also seen it happen to like other black people in the classroom too. Like, the teachers like berate them, humiliate them. Often the black boys are getting kicked out of class while the young white boys are still goofing off and playing little gay games with each other and stuff like that. Yeah, man. You see it all. You see it all. Young, gifted, and black. One of the Winters Group's principal strategists, Valda Valbrun, a K-12 educator, laments that children of color often do not feel good about themselves because of the limitations that school systems put on them and the inequities in resource allocation that I mentioned in Chapter 3. Valda has worked in several districts as a teacher, principal, and head of teacher development and sees the vast inequities that disproportionately affect black children. White teachers and administrators have deep-seated perceptions that black kids are just incapable of achieving. They pity them and set low expectations. Research shows that black and Latino students are least likely to be recommended for honors or advanced placement classes. Black and Latino students represent 38% of students in schools that offer AP courses, but only 29% of students enrolled in at least one AP course. Black and Latino students also have less access to gifted and talented education programs than white students. All right, being humiliated by the educator. That's the worst. That's the worst. Shout out to Kamal. It's the worst. According to the Office of Civil Rights, black students, and in particular black boys, were 2 to 3 times more likely to be enrolled in special education classes than their non-black peers. Black students without disabilities are more than 3 times as likely as their white peers without disabilities to be expelled or suspended. Although black students represent 15% of students in the Office of Civil Rights database, they make up 35% of students suspended once, 44% of those suspended more than once, and 36% of students expelled. Further, over 50% of students who were involved in school-related arrests or referred to law enforcement are Hispanic or black. As mentioned in Chapter 3, black children represent 19% of the nation's preschool population, yet 47% of those receiving more than one out-of-school suspension. In contrast, white students represent 41% of preschool enrollment, but only 28% of those receiving more than one out-of-school suspension. As a result, black students spend less time in the classroom, further affected their access to a quality education. Over 80% of K-12 public teachers are white, while less than half of the students are white. Research shows that white children often pity and under-challenge black children. They see them in a deficit framework, not capable of meeting, let alone exceeding standards. Black students with black teachers are 3 times more likely to be recommended for gifted programs. When black and white teachers evaluate the same black student, white teachers are 12% less likely to predict that the student will finish high school and 30% less likely to predict that the student will graduate from college. Children know. My daughter-in-law, Camilla Leggett, a research associate at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, studies the impact of bias on students of color. Her research reveals that children know when their teachers perceive them to be deficient. Children answered her queries with comments like the following. I mean, just because they think they can just look at you and say, oh, you're a bad child, but they actually don't even know you. So that's just what they think before they actually get to know you. But then when they get to know you, their opinions would change and they would think, and then they'll know that you're nice. You're not a bad child. They didn't really think that I had the answer. I was raising my hand to say something. But like the teachers kept calling on white people, not me. But I keep trying. It can be kind of hard because I feel like my teachers don't like me or think I know things. It's just I can't really explain it to you, but sometimes it's like I can tell at first. They think I'm going to be a certain way, and then they find out I'm different. How sad. This is so sad that there are black children going to school, feeling like they know that their teachers look down on them. This is why I raise my hand in class. I'm in university right now. I raise my hand every single time in class. I speak my mind. I let it be known. And I do my best as a student to try to prove these people wrong, right? And also to make a good representation for our people as well. But also to do it for all the black kids that are getting overlooked in classrooms and getting treated like shit by their teachers. How horrible that children can sense that. When I became an educator, when I became an English teacher, I'll never forget the first quote that stuck with me. Children don't remember what you teach them, but they will always remember how you made them feel. And I keep that with me. I keep that with me right now as I continue to teach English, but I'll continue here. It is fatiguing and psychologically damaging for children who are eager to learn to experience these biases, intentional or not. These situations can lead to internalized oppression that can follow the child through adulthood. For my son, Joe, once he was told that he was smart and capable, he started to perform that way. This is called efficacy. I met Jeff Howard, a Harvard-trained psychologist in the early 1990s. His organization, the Efficacy Institute, works with school administrators to advance the beliefs that there is nothing wrong with the kids. They can all succeed if they have the right tools and support. Efficacy is the judgment one makes about one's own ability to achieve. If teachers send messages, either explicit or implicit, that they do not expect the students to succeed, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Compounding the racism caused by harmful stereotypes, as pointed out in Chapter 3, schools that educate black and brown children are underfunded and, in general, under-resourced. The coronavirus outbreak again shed light on the digital divide as one of many problems. Students were forced to learn from home, and disproportionately students of color did not have access to the internet. What is so fatiguing is that this inequity was not new. Why had it not been effectively addressed before the pandemic? All right. Kamal says, I'm glad you made that difference. Shout out to Kamal, man. Shout out to everybody, man, who wants to continue to get educated, man. And education does not have to be in a classroom. You don't have to pay tuition to get educated. You could just do something simple. Write and read. The basis of all education, the basis of civilization is not agriculture, it's writing and reading. They were doing agriculture before we even had formal language. You get what I'm saying? People were able to figure out, hey, if I put this seed in the ground and come back later, I can eat what I put in the ground. Like, people knew that very early on in our hunter-gatherer stages. The basis of civilization, the basis of all education, is simply writing and reading. So I encourage everybody out there, I encourage everybody, black, white, whatever, write something, read something. That's all you need to continue to expand your mind. That's all you need, really. But yeah, so out of the mouths of babes. Internalized oppression starts in preschool. The famous black doll experiment, first conducted by psychologists Kenneth and Mamie Clark in the 1940s, and repeated several times since is evidence that black children often have a negative self-image. In the experiment, researchers show black children ages 4 to 7 several dolls, some white and some black, and ask the children a series of questions about them, including which one is pretty, which one is smart, and which one is good or bad. For all the people that studied psychology, and this is book react, so nobody's in here right now, but for all the people that study psychology, did they study the Kenneth and Mamie Clark doll experiment? Did they teach y'all about that in psychology, whether in undergrad or graduate school or in PhD programs? Do they ever talk about that? I highly doubt it. I highly doubt it, because why? The majority of universities professors are white, and they do not like to reveal the evil and wickedness of their ways. I am more than certain that most psychology students have not heard about the Kenneth and Mamie black doll experiment, even if they're master degree holders, I bet. Anyway, continuing here. And which one is good or bad? So 99% of the time, the children pick the white doll for the positive attributes and the black doll when the label is negative. When the interviewer asks the children why the white doll is better, some say that it is because it is white. Others will say that it is because it has blue eyes or because it is pretty. The most telling aspect of the experiment is the last question: which doll looks like you? In response to which the children point to the black doll. It is very fatiguing that the results have not changed since the 1940s. Then is now. So, Kamal says, Chris Rock got brutally picked on in the preppy white academy until his mama had him transferred. You would never think so. Interesting. I didn't know that. I didn't know that about Chris Rock. I never watched Everybody Hates Chris. I've seen like clips of it, and I thought it was a bit funny, but I've never watched Everybody Hates Chris, and I've never, read a Chris Rock biography or autobiography, so I don't know much about his life. I just think he's the best comedian. I think he's better than Dave Chappelle, but let me know. Anyway, as mentioned in Chapter 1, research demonstrates that babies as young as 9 months old show preference for their own race. Researchers do not conclude that this is racism, but it demonstrates that we do notice color early in life. Childhood interrupted. Black children often grow up too fast because of their social circumstances and stereotypes about their innocence. They experience the effects of structural racism based on where they live, where and what they learn, their economic means, what they have, and their legal means, how their rights are executed. In 2018, 32% of black children were living in poverty, and 65% of black children were living in single-parent households, versus 24% of white children. As a result, older children may have to carry out more household duties at young ages and be expected to care for younger children while their mother works. These circumstances often lead to chronic absenteeism from school, poor nutrition, and more health challenges, as described later in this chapter. Black children are perceived to be older and less innocent, regardless of social standing, something known as adultification bias. Studies show that black boys are as young as 10 are viewed as older and therefore more responsible for their actions, whereas white boys of the same age are presumed innocent. We as black people often feed into the narrative by using names like little man as terms of endearment. We also often feed into the stereotype that boys should not cry, as it is a sign of weakness. Young black boys are often taught how to withhold and withdraw to avoid provoking the fear or ire of those around them. As I mentioned, my son Joe was tall for his age from the time he was a toddler. He was often told in daycare to be careful because he could hurt the other children because of his size. Regarding black girls compared with white girls of the same age, they are seen as needing less support and nurturing, and as knowing more about adult topics, including sex. All right? Kamal says, I never watched this show either. I read about it beforehand, and yes, Chris is the GOAT. Yeah, I wonder if we should... I wish copyright laws weren't so strict, because I would love to do, like, full reactions to, like, series. like watch an entire series episode by episode, like The Wire. Like, I'll be honest, I've never seen The Wire. I've never seen Power. I've seen Snowfall, and Snowfall is lit. But I would like to watch an entire series like on live or something and like react to it with the people or something. There's got to be a way to do that. Anyway, the talk. Many black parents have the talk with their children. The talk is about racism and police brutality against blacks. Parents know that there is a high likelihood that at some point during their adolescence, their children will encounter racism in the form of an undeserved encounter with the police. The talk goes something like this: as black people, we continue to be subjected to unfair treatment because of the color of our skin, especially from law enforcement. If you are stopped, even if there seems to be no reason for it and you think you are right, just follow their instructions. Keep your hand in sight, on the steering wheel or up in the air. Do not make a move without their permission, and when you do, tell them exactly what you are doing. For example, reaching into the glove box for the registration. Only answer the questions directly with no additional commentary. If you are taken into custody, immediately call me and I will take it from there. Your job is to live. Ta-Nehisi Coates wrote a book in the form of a letter to his teenage son. It's titled Between the World and Me, and it draws on history as well as personal experience to discuss the different forms of violence against young blacks. Adolescent psychiatrist Adrienne Clark says the talk should start as early as age 6 with age-appropriate language. At this age, she recommends a book called Something Happened in Our Town, a child's story about racial injustice. The emotional burden this necessity puts on children and parents is fatiguing. So, going to the comments right here. Kamal says The Wire is the best crime drama in history. I've heard this. I tried to watch episode 1 of The Wire, and it wasn't that I got bored. I think maybe I just fell asleep because I was tired. I would like to watch The Wire because I feel like it's like mandatory. I feel like it's necessary because like I get so like people reference The Wire all the time, and I'm like, who the fuck is Avon? Like, what the fuck is an Avon? Isn't Avon like a car rental company or something like that? Or like Omar, you get what I'm saying? Like different parts of The Wire. I never watched The Sopranos either. And the crazy thing is that was all happening during my time. Like I should have been watching The Wire because like I remember it coming on TV. You know, you get what I'm saying? Like I remember skipping past HBO like when Sex and the City was on or stuff like that, but I was never interested in that. But yeah, I would like to do a live reaction to like maybe like The Wire or something like that as we go. But continuing here. So racism makes children sick too. Chapter 4 highlights the deep-seated and systematic nature of racial disparities in healthcare and outcomes. These disparities start in the womb from maternal exposures to stress manifested by preterm and low birth weights and carry through adulthood as higher coincidences of heart disease, diabetes, and depression. As pointed out in Chapter 4, the stress generated by early experiences with racism has been proven to create toxic stress. Black children are exposed to more racial stress by situations at home, poverty, experiences in school, the fear of being racially profiled by police, and the denial of their innocence. Stress leads to actual changes in hormones that causes inflammation in the body, an indicator of chronic disease. Researchers have found that black children are more prone to toxic stress or trauma. Based on research from the Opportunity Institute, they assert stress is a commonplace term for hormonal changes that occur in response to frightening or threatening events or conditions. When severe, these changes are termed toxic stress and can impede children's behavior, cognitive capacity, and emotional and physical health. Events that can engender toxic stress include a parent or close family member being incarcerated, the witnessing of domestic violence, physical or emotional neglect, financial hardships, exposure to external violence, divorce or separation of parents, overt discrimination, and placement in foster care. As has been discussed throughout the book, black people disproportionately experience all of these stressors, which all can be tied to structural racism. All right, even Obama spoke highly of Omar. That's crazy. I can't believe it. Is there really a quote? Kamal, is there really a quote of Obama talking about Omar? That's crazy. Obama watched The Wire. Obama watched The Wire and not me. That's crazy. That's crazy. We gotta watch The Wire. Should it be just me reviewing The Wire, or should I bring Acti in it too? Should Acti and I watch The Wire, or should just I do the review? Let me know. What do y'all think? Obama talking about Omar. That Omar fellow, he was a real G. Anyway, I'm sorry. Anyway, continuing here. Uh, as pointed out in this chapter and in chapter 4, black children are more likely to live in poverty, experience environmental racism, be food insecure, live in a food desert, or not have access to clean water, lack access to good quality health care, suffer from poor nutrition, not get enough sleep, and not receive a good education. Racism's impact on children's health is vast. It leads to weathering, as pointed out in Chapter 4. Imagine a weathered child. Oh my God. Youths who experience discrimination early in life face accelerated aging. They are also diagnosed with depression more often. In the University of Georgia's study, depression among black youth was significant at ages 10 to 15 and 20 to 29. Chapter 4 points out that black children die more often from sudden infant death syndrome and are more likely to have asthma, be obese, and attempt suicide in high school due to depression. The connected systemic issues interrupt a black childhood, affect their academic achievement, and almost guarantee that the cycle will be repeated for the next generation. In summary, and this will be the last paragraph we read today, so get the last comments and questions in before we wrap it up. Going to Kamal, he says, it was either a Newsbreak or Yahoo article where he was in office. I'll never forget reading it. Man, you got to find it and link it. I'm behind the Oval Desk, and I'm running this shit like Omar. It's me, Barack Obama, or as I'm known in the streets, Obeezy. Obama talking about Omar sitting behind the desk. I feel like Omar. I think I'm Big Meech, Larry Hoover, whipping work, hallelujah. One nation, under God, real niggas getting money from the fucking start. Obama talking about Omar, stop. Anyway. Children are our most precious gift. Aww. They deserve the best. Black children deserve the best too if we are to break the cycle of intergenerational fatigue. When children are taught that they are gifted and have unlimited potential, they fulfill that narrative. When they are told that they are less intelligent and older than their years, they also fulfill that narrative. All right? Marianne Wright Edelman, founder of the Children's Defense Fund and activist for children's rights, said, if we don't stand up for our children, we don't stand for much. We often declare that children are our future. Are only some children our future and others okay to throw away? What can we do? All right. Hallelujah. All right. Take a systems approach. Even though there are numerous organizations and efforts working on the issues that I highlight in this chapter, I wonder whether there is enough of a coordinated, collaborative, national effort to change the trajectory. I wonder whether we really are changing systems or simply focusing on programmatic solutions. There are initiatives such as Advancing Equity for Women and Girls of Color, which was started with the Obama administration. I do not think it has gotten much traction. A nationwide Boys and Men of Color initiative has taken root in a number of cities based on findings from the My Brother's Keeper task force. Programs often have an objective of changing the children or helping the children cope rather than changing the system, which would mean dismantling policies and practices that perpetuate structural racism. Systems are hard to crack, but that is what it will take. I realize this is not new news. Programs tied to larger systems change, such as Head Start, a federally funded preschool program, have worked to improve school readiness. Distribute school resources equitably. As mentioned in Chapter 3, schools that educate black and brown children are woefully underfunded. Often districts are funded based on an equality, everybody gets the same amount, rather than an equity model. Resource allocation is based on need. I think this is an easy fix. It is tangible and quantifiable. Every child should have access to technology, a computer, and internet access. Change the narrative about who black children are and what they are capable of. Media images need to change. Deficit thinking needs to change. Parents are mainly responsible for this, but teachers play a big role too. We can all play our part in debunking myths and shattering stereotypes. It takes a village. Fix economic inequities. The rich get richer and the poor get poorer, as the saying goes. The cycle of poverty cannot be broken if we have systems that favor those with higher incomes over those with lower incomes. While I realize this is a complex issue fraught with politics and different worldviews, it could be fixed if we wanted to do it. Some countries, including many European countries, pay parents when they have children as a means of reducing poverty, something known as a child allowance. Some countries pay poorer parents more equity model. They get the allowance whether they work or not, a basic difference from the United States child tax credit. Provide incentives for larger grocers to operate in black and brown communities. Children need access to healthy food. I discussed food deserts in Chapter 4. The lack of access to nutritional food leads to poor health outcomes. According to the United States Department of Agriculture, USDA, nearly 30 million people live in food deserts. Family Dollar, Lyft, and Thrive Market are addressing this issue. Family Dollars are often located in low-income areas and have started carrying fresh fruit. Lyft, the ride-sharing app, is providing rides to Washington, D.C. residents to larger food chains. Thrive Market, an online retailer, sells organic foods at 50% off retail prices. Mandate that landlords provide safe, lead-free, clean housing. As mentioned in Chapter 6, black and brown families are often living in substandard housing. Even though there are policies to prevent this, there is little monitoring and it takes months, if not years, to bring the perpetrators to justice. And love your children and love somebody else's too. Children need love. They need encouragement. They need hope. They need to know that adults believe in them. Changing the world for children will change the world for all and lift the burden of black fatigue. Excellent chapter right here. We're going to wrap up right here. Very excellent book. Really like this book. Very easy to read and blow through. Great reading. Shout out to everybody who showed up. Shout out to Kamal. Shout out to the new person, Kelani L. Shout out to Acti as well. And shout out to everybody who's going to watch this on the playback. We hope you enjoyed this live stream. And if you have any other books that you think we should read, put it in the comments. Y'all be easy out there. And